And welcome to the January, I almost said all-school meeting, what the heck?
Kelly.
Sweet memories. Instructional committee meeting on January 22nd. In attendance is committee members Barb Higgins, Jess Campbell, Sarah Robinson, and myself, Brenda Hastings, along with Board President Pam Walsh, Superintendent Kathleen Murphy, Assistant Superintendents Kim Yarlott and John Fabrizio. Welcome.
Thank you.
I'll throw this over to you, Kim.
Okay, thank you very much, and happy to be here tonight. We have a relatively full agenda, so we're going to get right to it. Our first up, we're going to have a conversation about world language at Rundlett Middle School, and here today is Jay Richard and his team, who is going to talk to you about Rundlett Middle School and a proposal about world language. So if you want to approach the mic, that'd be great.
We're throwing you right in. Right, real fast. Is it all right if I connect to the projector?
Yeah, go ahead. Yeah, go ahead.
While she was doing that, again, I'm Jay Richard, the middle school principal. Just to give you a little bit of background. One of the things I learned from Superintendent Murphy with my transition to here in thank you, John. My first time here in one of these academic meetings, so I'm grateful to be here. Again, when I first started the transition to here in Concord, Superintendent Murphy and I had a conversation, and I was aware there was an interest in terms of expanding world language here, specifically at the middle school. I quickly became fast friends with Katie, and we started to have conversations at the very beginning of the year. And I don't say this lightly, Katie's, I quickly learned, is very passionate about world language, super organized, forward-thinking, as well as has a schedule mind for middle school schedules, and not everybody has one of those. So it's actually been really refreshing and actually fun to work with her. So we started to have these conversations, and then I shared with her, hey, it'd be nice to meet some of the world language teachers, because I view this as, and I think Katie does too, is like it's a 6-12 program where we're all like a team and connected. So on the November 7th Professional Development Day, she told me that the world language staff, 6 through 12, would be happy to meet with me and on that teacher workshop day, and it was at 4 o'clock at night, and the next day was actually a holiday. So I just want to share that with you, like that's kind of how positive and passionate and fun they were to kind of hang out. It wasn't a typical type school day, and I really kind of enjoyed that meeting and was able to answer some questions. So I do have a little bit of experience having, expanding world language programs. I'm a big believer in it. It's like, exposing kids to a new language. It's learning. I feel the same way about music, because music really is kind of like learning a new language as well, how to read music. And so I just kind of believe in this, in terms of my observations of a world language people, it's very different. I'll just speak for myself, how I learned world language when I was in middle school or high school. We had to memorize vocabulary and do quizzes and all these things. How our world language teachers do it's really performance-based and proficiency-based, where the kids are talking, working on projects, and speaking the language in class. So it's very refreshing. So I'll kind of leave it at that. And then again, we've been meeting and having dialogue. So I'm going to turn it right over to Katie, and she deserves a lot of credit for putting together this PowerPoint.
Awesome.
Thanks.
All right. Hi, yeah, I'm Katie McDonough. I work as a Latin teacher at the middle school, and I'm also the 6 through 12 world language coordinator, which is a new position this year, created to kind of help streamline the experience for 7th graders to 12th graders. And so world language presented last spring to the instructional committee about what's going on sort of right now in world language, but I just wanted to review that a little bit before talking about our proposal for expanding. Right now, every 8th grader, this is new this year, every 8th grader is encouraged to enroll in a world language. So in past years, there have been guided studies that kids could opt for. But this year, we asked all students to pick a language, and there are very few exceptions for students who aren't in a language. which we think is great. The World Language Department hasn't had any hiccups. The kids have really all enjoyed it and are getting something out of it, and it's been a great year so far. We have 4 languages at the middle school level, which is really unique in the state. French, German, Latin, and Spanish. It's a full-day program, and it meets every single day. So that's what the 8th graders are currently doing. And it's about a 45-minute block. 7th graders all take a world language. They all take world language exploratory, which is 75-minute classes every other day over a quarter. And they're in a 2-week rotation. So they'll have Latin for 2 weeks, French for 2 weeks, Spanish for 2 weeks, and German for 2 weeks over the course of that quarter. And it's a really great way to get kids, because up to this point, most of them have never done a world language. Just how to learn vocabulary, how to pronounce things, what it's like to start learning about another culture. So we all really enjoy teaching the program, and we're passionate about it. Are there any questions about what we're currently doing? No? Okay. So we've been talking about the best way with the department, with Jay. Kylene has also been giving us her feedback from the 9 through 12 perspective on how to expand language in the middle school to get a fuller experience for 7th graders. And so our proposal would be to expand the 7th grade's current experience. So instead of a quarter, it would be a full year of world language for them every other day, which I can talk about in a second. And we would like to institute the exploratory program in the 6th grade. So what we currently do now in the 7th grade, we want to bring that down to the 6th graders so they have the introductory experience. Just to support world language in middle school classrooms and high school classrooms, there is some research linked at the end of this slideshow on literacy and test scores from the American Council for Teaching Foreign Languages. I don't want to read off slides to you, but if you want, unless you want me to, but it's linked on the last page of this, so you can go ahead. But everything points to positive correlations between literacy and studying world languages and improving test scores. When we started talking about expanding world language, we used the November 7th PD day to meet as a whole department. The middle school teachers and the high school teachers all got together, and we wanted to consider what the unique needs of middle schoolers are compared to teaching high schoolers. And most of the department has taught in both schools at one point or another, which is pretty neat. And all the teachers who teach at the middle school currently are also teaching high school classes. So it was a really productive conversation on sort of comparing, contrasting, and thinking about the unique needs of middle schoolers. And we pretty much agreed that
Old building.
we pretty much agreed that one of the big things is to make sure you keep it interactive and moving with the younger kids, and we plan to consider that as we consider planning for curriculum and classes in the 6th grade and expanding in the 7th grade. And having flexibility in lesson plans. We have a lot of experience in that already because you never know what's going to happen in a 7th or 8th grade classroom. And in designing curriculum, as Jay was saying, our focus and our philosophy as a department is to have students using the language, speaking it as much as possible. For Latin, rather than speaking it, it's a focus on getting them into texts and stories right away so that they're not just memorizing vocab or doing made-up sentences. And as a department, we all agree on that, and that's an important consideration to take for the middle school as we move it down, and to give kids a chance to keep practicing out loud and keep active in the classroom. And also considering how often we'll have to meet per week. We believe as a department we should choose depth over breadth when planning this curriculum. We want kids to really know the stuff rather than getting a smattering and maybe forgetting it over the summer. So, the proposal. Our vision is that 7th grade students would actually choose a language for the full year, French, German, Latin, or Spanish, and it would be their language for the next 2 years. So they would have that language in 7th grade and in 8th grade. And our hope, we're still working on the schedule at Rundlett, but what we're working on developing is a way for the students to have, give or take, somewhere between 50 minutes and an hour of world language every other day. So it would be a little bit longer period than the academics, but it would meet every other day to accommodate some scheduling needs. And so 7th and 8th graders would both have a year-long experience of a world language every other day. And the 6th grade proposal would be to have a similar world language experience that the 7th graders get right now. So 7th graders get to experience each world language on a quarterly basis in their exploratory block, and we want to bring something similar to the 6th grade for next year. Any questions? Yeah.
First of all, I think it's a great idea. I just think we live in a world that's visible to us
Mhm.
on our phones, and so language isn't something someone talks in some place I've never seen. You know?
Right.
My question is this, so I think it's, so as 7th grader would commit to 2 years, so what if they finished 7th grade and they really didn't enjoy French, and they really want to try German? Could they do German 1 with a 7th grade class, or would they have to do no language and become German at the high school?
Okay, that's a great question. So we researched what other schools with 2-year models do, and there are several options for us to consider. Some schools would have them take German 1, say, with the 7th grade. Some schools do that. Some schools give them the opportunity or suggest that they take the opportunity to do VLAX to sort of catch up a little bit and then join their language of preference in 8th grade. And at Oyster River, did students Oyster River
This
had-
is always a very it's a wonderful question because the reality is though we need to meet kids where they're at. So I work closely with Katie. So for example, if a new student moves into 8th grade, right, not from Concord, someplace else, it's definitely possible for that child to not have experienced world language. The same thing happens with music instruments and things like that often. So I promise you, Katie and I will work very closely together to make sure we're meeting the needs of those children. And middle school is about exploratory and choice, right? So if a student starts in 7th grade and all of a sudden they decide Spanish isn't their language for whatever reason and they want to do Latin or German, we will work with that child and family and make sure we have a fit for them for that following grade. So that's how we'll handle it.
Yeah, there's a lot of online options for language learning too. Kids could benefit from. Hot mic.
I do also think, I'm just thinking back to past experiences too. At the high school, when students move into the district, also a student might add Latin 1 and their Latin, or they might add Latin 2, but their Latin 1 experience had different vocab, a different curriculum, and just being flexible and working with them. So I think that the world language teachers are pretty experienced too with being flexible with kids in different spots. But that was something, at the end, there's linked, I emailed and called 6 or 7 kind of area middle schools to see what they do with similar situations. And so there's kind of some blurbs about other middle schools that are definitely going to give us ideas when we decide what the modus operandi would be for that. And it might not be the same for every student.
No, it's tricky, but we need to meet the kids where they're at. So.
Ms. Hastings? No, I didn't. Oh, is it okay if I? When we had this, I'm very excited too, but when we had this discussion last year or in the winter sometime, we did have a discussion about are we doing the right languages? And at the time there was talk about a survey of families, students to see, what languages they would like the opportunity to learn. And it was Dr. Herbert who said he would do that. So I'm not sure, or would think about that. So I'm not sure if anything happened on that.
We haven't talked further about a survey as far as I know.
No? Okay.
That's new information for me. I'm sure, Tim and I talk all the time,
Yeah.
so I'm happy to connect with him about that.
Yeah.
And figure out where we're at.
Yeah, and I mean, this might just be a great starting point for next year, but to think about, I know when we visited Oyster River, they were learning Chinese, and they're, and given some of the diversity in our community, there might be demands for different languages.
Yeah. Definitely. Were there any other?
I don't know if the eye got up, and so Katie, I apologize if I.
Oh, no worries.
Yeah, if this was asked. Can they change their language?
That's what, that, great minds think alike. Yeah. Right, short answer, yes, they could. We surveyed some different middle schools in the area who have 2-year programs similar to this.
Right.
To get some ideas. And so some ideas are some schools have students work on VLAX
Okay.
to catch up. Some schools just let them sort of take the 8th grade world language without the background and kind of work with the teacher. And what was and some schools would have them take it with the 7th graders. So if I wanted to switch from Spanish to German, I could take German 1, but it would be with 7th graders.
One more question is, how will the 7th graders know what to choose? Because they haven't had that experience in 6th grade.
They're having it in 6th grade.
But this year's
This year's
6th graders won't.
Yeah, right.
Right, that's something, we talked about that at our PD day in November, our current plan, it's not fleshed out yet because we wanted to have this meeting first, would be to work with the 6th grade teachers to create some sort of afternoon, maybe foreign language Fridays or something fun to get into 6th grade classrooms. Yeah, just to give them the chance to hear a little bit about each language, see the teachers, get to pronounce some words, play some games. Yeah.
Thank you.
Kids already kind of have like an idea, like especially when you're headed into middle school. I have a 5th grader already talking about like what is Rundlett going to look like, what kind of choices am I going to be able to make. She already knows what language she wants to get into.
Nice.
That's not necessarily the rule, but kids usually have an idea of the things that they're already leaning to anyway.
Yeah.
So I think like dipping the toe on Fridays would be perfectly sufficient.
Yeah, I think it would be fun and
Yeah.
a way to get them, just to help those ideas they already have.
Yeah.
There's a lot of Duolingo in the 5th grade.
Oh my gosh.
Oh my God, I know.
Very intense with the Duolingo. So we
Well, they just added Latin to Duolingo.
Yeah, that's
You know
amazing.
anyone that teaches Latin?
Me.
Yeah.
I actually think it's great. When a new kid moves in, when a new kid moves in, there was a Ukrainian student who moved in, and my kid was like learning Ukrainian words and Norwegian words on Duolingo.
Yeah, we've had to learn
Yep.
Yep. Farsi and all kinds of other stuff because we work with
Yep.
populations of
Yeah.
families. So. Good stuff.
Yeah.
So
Right, and we have a little bit more about, and this is in the slides that you guys have, just sort of the mission and vision for exploratory world language because it's such a unique program. Although I did find out a couple other middle schools do offer exploratory world language. The Cooperative in Stratham was one of them, and it's the schools that have 3 or 4 languages have these cool exploratory programs. But it is fairly unique. So I just did want to put in the slideshow so you had it our mission and vision and kind of some of the goals of just teaching kids, getting them started at least, and learning how to learn about culture and world language. Not necessarily just learning the 4 individual languages, but just what is language learning. And we have talked about staffing implications because it would be, of course, an expansion. And there's different scheduling models. The every other day model that we're working on does help us with some flexibility. And there's also flexibility with world language staff who teach 2 languages or are dual certified who have experience in different languages. But it could mean up to 1.8 or 2.0 staffing increase depending on what happens, how the scheduling shakes out, what the signups look like, and that sort of thing. Any questions on? Yeah.
And this is probably actually more for the superintendent, but do we see any contractual issues with the teachers union on them teaching 2 different sets of class? Like, they'll be teaching more kids probably, if they're teaching 2 class, every other day, 2 sets of class, So I don't know if there's limits.
So what I will say is Principal Herbert and I already had these conversations with Katie to make sure we do our best to align the high school, middle school schedule.
Okay.
So for example, when the world language teachers on, say, a Crimson Day, right, their schedule is in the morning, and then we could have them at the middle school in the afternoon, and the same thing, I think they call it White Day, or we're going to have like an A-B type schedule. So Principal Herbert and I are already having those conversations to make sure we align so we have reduced the possibility of having scheduling issues.
Would That's not
But you're
quite-
right, you're right. There are rules and guidelines that we follow relative to teacher schedules. They teach so many blocks or so many classes a day, so I have to stick with that.
Okay.
However, we have on occasion, as you know, because of, I'll use Krista McAuliffe as a good example, because of the number of classrooms she has, I asked music and art teacher to teach an extra period because I needed to be able to do that to cover all of their unified arts classes. So we've done that, only on a volunteer basis. We don't, it's not demanded. But for the most part at the high school, middle school, they have the same number of classes that they teach, and it's all dictated by their contract. Is that?
Yeah, no, I guess I was wondering if there was a limit on the number of students that, how many.
No, I don't think so. And if, as I just heard, that they would be looking in the budget, when you're going to deliberate the budget very soon, that they were looking between 1.8 and 2.0 staff, so that will cover the increases in student load.
Yep.
And the every other day model that we're looking at is very similar to what the exploratory teachers currently teach. And so I think modeling after their schedules would help keep it in line with the contractual needs.
I don't know if this is a weird question. New girl here. Do you think that if putting emphasis on something like this will help draw talent to the district to teach here? Because I just feel like this is something that is special about us. Do you think we'd see an impact on that?
Boy, I mean, as a world language teacher,
Yeah.
I think so.
I don't think it's working.
I don't. Oh, am I not on either?
No, mine isn't.
Oh, good. But just personally, as a world language teacher, I think so. And I think if we talk to some of the teachers who've been hired more recently in our department, I do think it was a draw for them. Is the idea of being 7 through 12 instead of there are a lot of districts that are like 9 through 12. That not even. And so I think expanding down to 6th grade would be a draw, in my opinion.
I think this is amazing. I'm so excited. This is the stuff that is the fun part of our job. And I really appreciate all of the time and effort that you've put into this so far.
Thank you.
Can I just put Katie on the spot for a second?
Absolutely.
Katie, if you had your dream, what do you think foreign language should look like in the Concord School District? Where should we start? Is it?
Oh,
Come on, I give you the
Well.
open mic now.
Latin in every classroom.
You can teach French too.
I think ultimately, I think it would be great. Well, I mean, I really believe in this model, having worked with the World Language Department on kind of looking at all our options. We looked at a few different options. We talked about expanding the 7th grade to a quarter-long exploratory experience for each language. That was another option on the table. We did talk about the idea of 3 years of world language, students picking when they come into 6th grade. Ultimately, the department and I fell on this plan because we thought it had the best of both worlds of what we're currently doing. It would expand it to 7th graders. They would have a full year. They would have the consistency of 2 years, and it would maintain the unique exploratory program that lets them start to learn about learning a world language. And so I really stand behind this, and I know the department does too, which makes me feel good.
Katie, she's giving you
She's
an option.
saying we should be
Miss
teaching
Ellen
language in
School.
kindergarten. That's what she was
I
setting you
can't even
up for.
dream that far. Are we allowed to go that far?
They need to hear that, because I know from the research, we were very clear about when you introduce languages and
Oh,
when
sure.
you explore languages and introduce it to kids, and you can see how quickly, when Sesame Street and some of those early programs, kids were speaking the Spanish words and whatever, they would have French words.
Yeah.
She's
Manchester
right. I
is-
threw you a hook and I
Yeah, I'm
couldn't see
sorry.
it.
I'm sorry. No, we've talked about that too. I think it's Manchester has bilingual cohorts
Yeah.
right now, and there's some really cool stuff going on. I just didn't dare to dream.
The younger the kids, the more enthusiastic they are, and that's the truth. So that's what's exciting
Yeah.
about even lowering this by grade levels. These kids are going to be very enthusiastic
In our
about it.
district, where we have a diverse, demographics.
Yeah.
And so this is an ideal place to be able to explore that. I know down the road, all at once would be quite an impact on their budget. But I think that down the road, I think that there's been a lot of discussion about introducing it in the elementary school.
Oh, sure.
I can imagine that there are districts that already offer language integration
They
at
do.
younger years.
They
I mean,
do.
if it's good pedagogy, it really does come down to being a budgeting issue. So if we can introduce this time and then, you know, scoot that exploratory year to 5th grade and then scoot it to 4th, I think that would be, I mean, it's really a beneficial path for students, full stop, to say the least. Like, yeah, I mean, and thank you very much for all of the links to all the studies.
Oh, yeah.
I think that's a really great resource to have
Yep.
for parents who are maybe didn't have that on their radar and would
Yeah.
like to understand a little bit more about what the benefit to their student could be. But yeah, I'm with you on that. Like, the younger and younger we can start introducing this option, the better, for sure.
Yeah, great.
Cool.
Awesome.
Thank you, everyone.
Yeah,
Thanks
thank
for your
you.
time and effort. We really appreciate it.
Next, I think we have Ms. Demers coming to talk to us.
Was that the color today?
It must be, we all got the message.
The mustard color? Is that the color of the day? Kim has it on too.
Hi, everybody.
Hi.
Chris?
I would love to say that I have something equally exciting. This is, thanks for the tough act to follow, World Language Team.
Hey, thanks for the work. I really appreciate it.
You're welcome.
Thank you. Thanks, Jay.
All right, I'm going to try to make this appear up here.
No pressure.
No, I think I got it. All right, so, hi, I'm Chris Demers, Assessment Coordinator. Nice to see you all. You have, I believe, the very brief presentation that I'm going to share with you in your packet already. So I'm just here to sort of talk you through what's there, answer any questions that you have. And actually did a little bit of thinking about this afternoon that I wanted to share with you at the very end. So Kathleen had asked me to come to provide a brief attendance update as it relates to one of her goals this year. Do we all know where we are in our
I just don't
booklet?
have one.
It's a little packet.
It is, oh, there's a separate packet. All right, I haven't actually seen this.
Very special.
Ready?
Does that make me special? There it is, thank you for that. Does everybody have that?
It appears so.
Okay, all right, so, so basically there are two parts to this. Actually, this will be the shortest data presentation I've ever done, and far less interactive than I'm used to, but I welcome you to ask any questions and jump in. Basically, the two parts are a little bit about students, a little bit about staff. So, if I can make this actually advance, this doesn't seem to be working. Here we go. So, one of the things that we report to the state every year is our overall attendance rate. And so I thought for context, it would be good for you to see how we have compared over the last 5 years to the state. And it probably isn't a surprise to you that during the 1920, 21, and 22 school years that attendance rates across the boards have dropped, and we don't have to mention why that was. But as you can see, we have, for the most part, followed the state pattern. And we typically, as you can see, haven't been too far off, with the exception of the 1920 year, I think is our largest gap, but it's basically 1 percentage point. And then as you see, for the 22-23, at least there's a suggestion that the trend is turning around, and whether or not that'll continue for 23-24 remains to be seen. So that's sort of the big picture in terms of student attendance. Any questions about that? All right, so hiding within that, to break it down a little bit further, basically on this table, the far right numbers are basically the ones you just saw in the graph for both Concord in red and then the state in black. But all you see here in addition to that is what the breakdown looks like for elementary, middle, and high school, and the impact that each of those levels has on the total. So again, I didn't lay it out graphically, but the trend sort of plays out that we saw in the graph. One thing that catches my eye is what happened in 1920 at the middle school, with that rate being so much lower than everything else. I can't tell you what that was, but you can see the impact that it had on the total for that year for the district at 94%. When you look at what the elementary and high school percentages were for the 1920 year, they were significantly higher than that, and the impact that the middle school had. Again, I can't answer why that is, but that's what happened that particular year, and you can see since that time, the middle school numbers have crept up to the 22, 23 levels. So, questions about how that should be interpreted? Okay, great. Wow, we're moving right along. So, that's the student piece. On the staff side of things, and I know you already see this in your printout, but I just wanted to sort of pause for a second and explain to you the very strange numbers that you're about to see. There is what's called the data dump Excel file that I can get from HR, which is a massive Excel file that I would not subject any of you to. What you're about to see is all of that information collapsed, but basically what that file is every record of every absence, whether it's a fraction of a day, whether it's multiple days, for every person in the district. What I did is I weeded the garden, focused on teachers, first of all, and then focused specifically on everything you see in the yellow box. Total absences include, in this case, appointments, bereavement, emergency, leave without pay, personal days, and sick days. Basically, I made a judgment call on this, the stuff that we have control over. The not included, what I took out of there, I can't explain why, but the high school, I think it's for coverage reasons. If somebody goes on a field trip with their class, they're marked as absent. I don't know why that is, but I took those out. Contributions to the sick bank, obviously, they weren't really absent. It's just time off their accrued time. Maternity leaves, I know you have control over that, but that's sort of a unique case. Administrative leaves, jury duty, and FMLA. So I took those out. Those are sort of the unique stories that would greatly skew the numbers. Mm-hmm. And so then what we have basically is 4 months of information. When you combine all of that for 2022, September, October, November, and December, what you get are these very big gross numbers. And by gross, I just mean it's an amalgam of every person who was out total for that month of September, for example, 457.8 days absent. Now, it seems like a huge number, but that is every teaching adult in every building combined. Mm-hmm. And then you can see what happened the next month last year. It not nearly doubled, but close to it. I suspect that was probably a weird COVID month. Mm-hmm. And then it settled down a little bit in November and then toward December for a total of 2,121 days, which again seems like a ginormous number when you add up everything that I got in this very huge Excel file. So I provided that for you just by comparison so you can see what the 23 numbers look like.
So what's the denominator on these numbers? So how many staff are we talking about?
Yeah,
or how many like total days of staff time?
Should it be? I know, it would give it context.
Yes.
Yeah, I wish I had thought about that.
Okay.
I can't tell you.
Can you tell us later?
I possibly could.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah, I think I could. Yeah, just got to get the total teaching staff in each building times the number of days teaching. Yeah, that would be fun. All right, I'll do that.
I'm so glad.
Thanks.
Our idea of fun is similar. So.
Thanks for the homework, Pam. Yes, I'll get right to that. That's a great idea. Wish I had thought of that sooner.
And I'm going to talk about this again on Saturday at our retreat. So if
I can get that by then.
Chris on it, because he's working with me on some other numbers. So I think, though, the one message that I'd like to take away is both student and staff attendance has improved, and that was a goal that we had set. Do you remember? Mm-hmm. When I was looking for 95% attendance rate for our students as well as staff. So we're looking, we're at least showing some improvement there.
Yeah, and I will have that for your work this weekend.
Okay.
Thank you for asking that, Pam. So without that, just for context, just to see what happened in 23 in the last few months, as Kathleen just said, that we've got obviously some signs of improvement. The totals for each month have dropped. October was a very different story from a year ago. And you can see that the total difference out of whatever it should be drops 521. So it nearly dropped by a quarter, which is encouraging. So That's what that means. Thank you for that suggestion. I will do that, and I think that makes a lot of sense to add that. Lastly is just this piece, and this is, I'm sorry it's hard to see, but you've got it in front of you. I don't really love averages, but when you put all of that together in terms of how many people missed how many days during that same window of time back in 22 first, including everyone who had perfect attendance, all the way through some person who missed 29 days, the average ends up being 5.5 days out per staff, in a sense. And then when we compare that to the most recent window of time for that same August through December time period, you see that that drops to 4.1 days, and you sort of now see how the distribution has changed for that same 4-month period. And I did a little bit of thinking, and you don't have this in your slide deck, but if you take a look at those same graphs with a little bit of chicken scratch on top of that, I was trying to make some sense of this today, and I'm not really sure this is the best way to do it. But I started by looking at, all right, so we've got just the number of people who have missed either no days or 1 day. I don't have a lot of confidence in the 11 people that didn't miss any school last year, and that is because when I got the data from HR a few weeks ago to pull for last year, there was something with the query, and I just don't believe that really there were only 11 people that missed no school. So I suspected that very first bar to the far left could be higher, but we have to accept it for what it is. That's what I was reported. But if you compare just who missed either no time or 1 day, you can see that we've gone from 11, allegedly, to 36 people who have missed no school in this last year, which is encouraging. And then for those who missed 1 day, 32 to, 52. I should look at my own screen. And then I look at that next clump. So the mode-ish for last year was 2, 3, 4, or 5 days missed during that 4-month period. But they're all in the 40s, right? So then you look at, well, what happened last year, or I should say this year. Now the mode is in the sort of the 2, 3, 4, specifically 3 days out. And the numbers are a little bit higher than the 40s. So at first I thought, well, that doesn't feel great, that those few 2, 3, 4 days are actually higher than they were last year. But then things drop significantly beyond that. So now you go to like 6 days in 2022, we had 35 people miss 6 days. Well, it's about the same for 2023. Again, 33 people missed 6 days. But then you drop beyond that, you've got that second sort of cluster there in 2022, 7, 8, 9 days. You had 20 or so people missing 7, 8, 9 days. You look at 7, 8, 9 on 2023, the numbers, well, not 7 so much, but 8 and 9 are smaller. That's encouraging. So that sort of cluster dropped a bit. And then 10 or more, that blue blob there in 2022, you got that sort of cluster of 10 through 15. You got a chunk of people that have missed 10 to 15 days in 2022. You look at that same blue blob to the right, and the numbers are much smaller. So far fewer people missing that much time. And then you've got these sort of anomalies off to the far right on the first graph, 17, 18, 19, 21, 23, 25, 29 days. Again, one person each, but still a sizable chunk of days. And on the right, the extreme stops at 16, and then nothing beyond that. So the story's changing a bit. I'm not sure how else to interpret that, but that's where I'm at.
Do you think it might have something to do with like a relaxed culture around COVID testing?
Say more about that.
Well, I remember like a couple of years ago, my kids missed an entire month of school because of the way COVID went through my house and their proximity to somebody who had contracted it. And I know that since then it's become a more, relaxed expectation of how we're going to isolate or keep kiddos out of school and what masking rules have changed. I just wonder if there is some kind of like cultural shift from year to year about how seriously we are choosing to isolate ourselves, and maybe what protocols, from the administration might I don't know, encourage folks to come back faster, or I'm just thinking about the way in my own household, communicable diseases have sort of like, they come and they go.
Right.
And like, how does that affect the way that your kids can be in school? And a lot of educators have kids.
Sure.
So just, I'm
Yeah.
just thinking out loud.
No, that
You
makes
know?
some sense. I mean, having spent the last 2 years in a building, I mean, clearly for both staff and students, the feeling was different in terms
Right?
of
Yeah.
people out for chunks of time, whether they were adults or kids. Yeah, I think there's something to be said for that, for sure. I don't know if that's the only reason. Here,
But it's part.
I
I'm
don't
sure
know
it's
when
part
the
of it.
guidance changed, right? It used to be if someone in your household had COVID, then you had to isolate for the
Right. And now
10
it's if you
days
haven't
or
been,
whatever.
Yeah, if you're
And
not
now
showing
it's like,
symptoms and yeah.
and now you have to isolate for 5 days, and then you can go out with a mask, and it doesn't matter if it's
Yeah,
So
yeah.
that.
There's different cultural expectations that I think are often unsaid as well. Like, oh yeah, everybody in the house has a cold. Is it RSV? Is it COVID? You know what I mean?
Right.
Like, you can't deny that that's a thing that's happening in our
Yeah.
community
Yeah.
about the severity of how we're taking these things now.
yeah. Well, I don't have the answer in my back pocket,
No,
but that
and neither
feels
do
like
I. It was a hypothetical.
a reasonable suspicion anyway, in terms of one way to explain these numbers. I don't know. Yeah. Any other thoughts, questions, observations, wonderings, homework assignments for me?
That was really interesting.
Do you have student trends for this year?
So I started that, and it was an experiment that didn't really work. I had taken a week of time from 2 weeks after the holiday break last year, and I had what attendance looked like for that week of time, building by building. So I thought, all right, let's compare that week to what just happened a couple weeks ago. Right off the bat, last Monday, we had snow. It wasn't a snow day, but we had enough snow that people either went skiing or didn't want to send their kids to school, and so the numbers were way up. So I thought, all right, Monday's already off. And then, I don't know, something else happened that week so the experiment really didn't work.
Yeah.
I think it's important to note too that while I'm very encouraged to see these numbers going down, mostly for student success. We know that students do better when their teachers are there, but also the amount of money that we spent on substitutes last year was in excess of $1 million, I believe, or close to $1 million.
Over our budget.
Well over our budget.
That would, no. It was like $1 million over budget or something
Yeah,
like that.
it was-
Yeah.
And those are positions. We just saw we might want to hire 2 new teachers for world language, and that money I would much rather spend on programs like the new world language than on substitutes.
Well, and then there's the hidden cost beyond the subs of the people in-house who, when you can't get a sub,
Right.
who are asked to
Exactly.
take on classroom coverage. I mean, when I was a math coach at Beaver Meadow for my first year, I was one of the most expensive subs in some cases because there were just nobody available.
Right.
And so, because I didn't have a classroom assignment, I was tapped on the shoulder regularly, and it was to no one's fault. It was just out of necessity.
The way it was.
So,
And
yeah.
I know that people probably look at this and think, oh my gosh, they're watching every move that we're making, and it's not for those reasons. It's for the reasons of student achievement, and we could better spend that money on hiring more teachers. It would certainly, I think, be the wish of the board to do that rather than substitutes. So.
Well, I'm hopeful about what we see, and I will continue to bring information to you because that was one of my goals for the year, and so be it your goals too because you were concerned about it. So I will continue to bring you and update this information, and hope we keep on this trend line that Chris just showed us.
Great. Thank you, Chris.
All right. Thanks, everybody.
Thanks for the info. Very
Absolutely.
interesting.
Thank you for all your work.
Yeah.
Next, I think we have FernSeiden coming up with some social, academic, and emotional behavior risk scanners that we'll be looking at. Thank you, Chris.
These mics are awful hot.
Well,
So thank
We're
you to.
trying to balance the sound system. Remember, we were having that. So
Oh, I know it.
it's working. I stood back there and it was very good.
Oh, that's
so.
great. Yeah.
So FernSeiden is our new student and staff, relatively new wellness person, and you've heard about SAEBRES in the past when Janine Richards was here, and we just want to give you a little bit more information, just really a brief overview of what this tool is, a reminder of what this tool is and how it is that we use it.
Yes, so I'm hoping that at the end of this you can see really how it is, let's just get this slideshow up, how SAEBRES is, like what it looks like in the school to administer the SAEBRES and what it means and what its purpose is. I will go through a little bit of background because we want to sort of contextualize it again for those who might be listening to this. So the first thing to understand about SAEBRES is that it's a key core component of a multi-tiered system of support. And it's a screening tool that kind of fits in between Tier 1 and Tier 2. So Tier 1 being the universal instruction that all kids get to support their social, emotional, behavioral health and skills for learning. And then allows us to understand if there are kids who need more instruction at that Tier 2 level. And you can see that the numbers typically, our goal is to have, there would be about 5 to 15% of students who would need a little bit more support, strategic efforts to help students learn skills such as social, like the social skills needed for learning, or the self-regulation skills needed to support their learning in the classroom or across the school. And then at the very highest level is Tier 3. And that's for the highest intensity support that kids would need. And that's more individualized. It's very intentional. It's very intensive. So that's a smaller number. And so the SAEBRES really helps us address how do we find those students? What are those? Who are those students? And it also helps to understand, if you look at trends within it, you can also, in the SAEBRES and in screening tools, you can also see how it pushes down, helps us push down to Tier 1, say, wow, we have a lot of kids who seem to need more support in a certain area, let's say self-regulation. So maybe we want to enhance our Tier 1 supports across the universally in certain areas, let's say the playground. So you want to try, or across a certain grade level, kindergarten. So you can use the SAEBRES for that purpose too. So you can strengthen Tier 1. And I wanted to just mention that the important thing to understand is it's always triangulated. We'll talk about this in a minute, but it is absolutely not a diagnostic tool. It is not a tool that measures, it's not a psychological tool. It's really a screening tool that takes a big, high overview, casts a very broad net and wide net to make sure kids aren't falling through the cracks. A lot of the times that kids come up on the SAEBRES are kids we say, oh, we're working with those students already, that we've met with parents and we're already enhancing their supports in schools. But it's very important that we see the whole picture and make sure that some of the kids who might not be showing up, that we're helping them. So we're trying not to miss the students who might need more support. Oops. So you administer SAEBRES, and that's the background. The next part of this is what happens when you administer. It's important to understand that teachers are administering this. This isn't something that students are doing. We've sent out letters to inform families across the district that this is included. It's just like any other screening tool. We have a dyslexia screening tool. We use screening tools really as this broad brush to kind of say, who do we want to get more support for? So when a Tier 2 team meets, that's like an intervention team meets to discuss all the data, and it's always triangulated with other data. You can't just look at it alone. So you're trying to look at it with attendance data, with nursing visits, some of those kids who are visiting the nurse over and over again, and maybe some of the behavioral referrals that we're gathering in the Swiss data. And then we put it together and they start going through and saying what kind of things could be used. What could these kids benefit from? And they're matched with some evidence-based practices that students could benefit from. small groups in various areas, such as I said, self-regulation or social skills, and a program that's very highly used in Concord is the check-in, check-out system, which is really having a one-on-one relationship with someone where you go and you talk, you set goals together, and you check in and out with them during the day. And at that point, when we're matching, we notify parents, we are assigned consent is, we're seeking that to make sure parents know, because of course parents are their first teachers in these areas, so partnering with them is really helpful in reinforcing these skills. Then we begin a group intervention cycle that typically is about 8 to 10 weeks, and we're looking at data, seeing how they're doing. We kind of set some goals for the students. What does success look like? And then we're measuring and using some pre and post outcome data. Some of that is some of it is just saying, hey teachers, hey parents, how are the kids doing? And do you see them using this skill more often in class? Let's say initiating their work on their own instead of breaking down, putting their heads down, or but they're focusing, have a growth mindset when they start new work. And then the new cycle begins once again. What's nice is that we have some other folks in our district offering Tier 2 groups. Riverbend is partnering with us to offer groups as well. So that's wonderful. This is what it looks like. It's 19 questions, and you can see that it's there are questions about social behavior, because it's SAEBRES stands for social, academic, and emotional behaviors. So there's social behavior, there's academic behaviors, and there's emotional behaviors, and those are pulled together to give a composite score, or you can look at the sub-scores. And these are aligned. You can kind of take these apart and align them and see how they would align in with the CASEL competencies, which is a very important part of this. Mm-hmm. So we see here, like the withdrawal is an example of something that might fall through a student might fall through the cracks, a student who's very withdrawn. So if that comes out high, we might go, I wonder what's going on. Let's call the parent. Let's talk more about that. And you might cross-reference that with different teachers. If the classroom teacher does this in elementary, they might say, let's go talk to the other, the exploratory teachers, see how they're faring, and see how that student's faring in those classes. Are they withdrawn there as well? So get a sense of that. Again, not jumping to conclusions. This is a 1-month snapshot. You're looking, teachers are asked, think about the last month. So there could be a lot going on in that last month. And so it's just a great way to pull those kind of skills together. So SAEBRES is offered by...
I'm wondering, how
Yes.
often do these happen?
I'm sorry, this happens 3 times a year.
3 times a year?
So fall, winter, spring. Fall is kind of a benchmark, and it's usually higher because the teachers and students don't know each other as well. Or you might see a kid who goes up later because the honeymoon phase, the beginning, and then you start seeing they become more comfortable in school, and some of the needs start emerging later. So 3 times a year, and only up to freshmen. They use other measures from sophomore, junior, senior, because it's a very big task to do this in high school, because they change teachers so often that it's hard for them to say, to pick one teacher to do this, or even an advisor. It's hard to look at this and get a really good picture. So they've done a wonderful job with freshmen looking at a way to do this that balances lots of different voices. So, and they do it as a team. But it's a heavy lift to do that for every grade, but it's there to use if people wanted to say, let's do a SAEBRES on this kid and just see, let's use the SAEBRES to monitor this kid throughout the year.
And if a student had done this in the fall and then was fine, seemed to be in Tier 1, and then all of a sudden started displaying some concerning issues, could it then be again?
Yeah. Oh,
done
yeah.
In the fall, we wouldn't have to necessarily wait till winter.
Well, no, you do wait till you do it just during these cycles. Though there's very particular windows that it can be open on the SAEBRES, on the SAEBRES site. I mean, you could take the paper copy because this is downloadable, and you could just say, let's just check it off, and a person might decide, let's just follow this for a little bit just to see how the child does, because I just want it in my, just as a tool
Right.
to allow you to kind of do some measuring. But I think the one thing to remember is it's a screening tool, so really a lot of those things, if you see the kid, things going on, there are a lot of things that could be done without the SAEBRES as well. So think about it as a big tool that does the big lift of identifying and
That's a good way to
pulling
look at that,
kids,
yeah.
but to understand that it fits into a whole spectrum of kinds of ways that we know students.
I imagine at the high school level too, you could have a student that has a great relationship with a teacher or a certain style of teacher and is very triggered by another teacher. So same student, two different teachers, completely different.
Exactly. So last year was a great pilot year because that really emerged. They were like, this doesn't work because exactly that. And so they really worked hard to come up with a method that would balance that. And that in itself becomes really good data, because now you're going, aha, let's figure out what's going on and let's problem solve around that, because we've got to improve that relationship because the student
I'm
is.
not sure, do they still do freshman teams at the high school where a group of freshmen has the same
Yeah, we've created
group of
teams
kids,
up
right?
there. and
Yeah.
grouped
That
them.
would be an easy way to get those 4 teachers together.
That's
primary
exactly
teachers.
what they do. That's exactly what they do. They do it all together. And Margie Boroska leads them through. She asks the questions and she pulls that data together so that it's not just one teacher owning it. And that's a great thing to do as freshmen, as the kids are
Another good place
adjusting.
to look, although it's different quarter to quarter, is health educators, PE teachers, art
Yes.
teachers, they see all the students. So as a health educator, I had 125 students a quarter.
Yeah.
So it was really easy for me to get a sense of a group of kids' mental health, a big number of kids in a grade. So those teachers would be good to add in, to pull into those sorts of things.
Yes.
Because, they have a different look. And those classes are often open. Health
Yeah.
class was a big dumping ground for what might be going on.
Yes, a lot of good conversation comes up there, and health teachers are a wealth of knowledge for understanding kids and their needs.
I'm sorry, this is from what grade until freshman?
So K to 9.
K to 9?
It can be used through 12, but it's just, there are so many other ways to look at data in high school and they do such a great job. It really wasn't needed, and added just extra time where that time could be used elsewhere to support kids,
That's
so.
what's I love this, so my line of questioning is not because I don't like it. I am wondering if we have any anecdotal feedback on how much time this is taking for the teachers to do, and if
Yes.
taking that time away from something else, if they found it's worth it in that sense.
I think we're kind of new in this, like this
Right.
is our second year. I know that it's been, that the schools have done a great job in finding ways to give teachers time to do this.
Okay, yeah.
So that's been very, very helpful in getting this off the ground, because I know it can be an obstacle to rolling out
Right.
a screening tool, is finding that time. So
For sure.
I think they do it during a PLC time, or maybe I can't remember the different times that
Right.
they take, but they've really carved out time, and we haven't had people saying, I think people are seeing the good thing about our district is you cannot screen until you can intervene. And in our district, we have such strong tier 2 systems with our partnership with Riverbend, and because we've had MTSS running, there are some systems in place. There are dips in places where there's still kind of big changes have happened, people have left, people have come and gone, so it's not super consistent, but overall, they're able to offer that intervention, and so I think teachers then see, this is valuable, like it adds to it.
Great, thank you.
So I just wanted to, just because I know this is being recorded and people could be watching, I just want to make sure people understand that it's not a diagnostic tool. It's never used as a singular measure. It's not ever, it doesn't require psychological training. Any of us could use this. You can print it off and use it as a parent if you want to, just see like, I want to monitor how often my kids are withdrawing or, having tantrums. And it's generalizable across all settings. So it's just one snapshot that helps us with our process. And it's very much about teaching the whole child. Teachers are given time during the academic day. It really only takes supposedly 1 to 3 minutes to complete once you get going. And once you learn the questions, I think that's, and you also are learning what to look for. So you become better at it over time. Let's see.
Can I ask a question about
Yes.
the families? I know consent is sought, but did we do a good enough job explaining what these small group sessions are and then reporting out? I saw one permission slip where it was like, your child may be put in one of these groups. Please say yes. Please send this back if you object. So it was a reverse, it was an opt.
Oh, I can explain that. That was just to share out that this is happening,
Yeah,
like
okay.
district-wide announcements, because I
Okay.
didn't want people to, I really felt it was very important to be very transparent,
Yep.
that this is part of the array of tiered interventions, including reading, writing, math, that we do, that we're incorporating this, because it is a new trend in education,
Yep.
fairly new. And so when a child is actually being in a group, you actually get a real permission form. It's like, hi, your child's been invited to this group to talk about self-regulation. We'll be using the zones of regulation. We'll meet on Mondays. The person meeting with the student will be this. We'll be sending, and they send home a letter in the middle and at the end at least to share. So, yeah, absolutely. Yeah, that I can see how that would have been. That part is just to make sure people are understanding that. It's part of what we offer.
Well, and your first notice isn't putting a child in a group.
No, it's
Your
not.
first notice is, here's something that's happening, and potentially
Yes.
your child could be actually.
Yeah, it's just to let people know. These are, I just wanted you to see, again, a snapshot. We're talking about managing stress and worry, or relationship and social skills, self-regulation skill development, academic skill development, goal setting, those kinds of things. And these are the folks who are offering them. And I just wanted you to see a chart that would show, like, this is a district chart. Here you can see that 1 to 5, so the bottom of high risk, at that very top of the tier, is looking like we're fitting into that 1 to 5% that a strong MTSS system looks like. So that's a nice sign, so that we're doing some nice work there. The light pink is a little high, elevated. It should be around 5 to 15%, so that's some risk area. Low risk, one of the interesting things about SAEBRES is I think they must think all kids have all kids are at some risk. They call it low risk, because low risk is the lowest you can go. So there's no category that's no risk. So just so you're aware. So low risk, we're at, we still see that mid-section's large, so that it makes, if you look at what is 20% of a school with, 300 kids, that's a lot of kids that we're trying to serve. So sometimes we might say, oh, they're not going to be in a group because there's so much more we can do in a classroom and work with the parents, that a group isn't needed right now. So that is it. Yes,
You
can we
said
go back?
7 out of 10 grades screen made gains when comparing the previous 2 years. Are you comparing like this year's 7th grade to last
Yes.
year's 7th grade, or are you comparing this year's 7th grade to when they were 6th graders?
I just did 7th grade to 7th grade. I
Okay.
didn't follow the grade
Okay.
to see, but that would be good to
It
do.
would be interesting to follow the cohort.
Yes.
And from
Yeah.
grade K,
It will
1,
be-
2,
yeah.
and just see how they
Yes.
go.
It would be very interesting to do that. And last year this year I think is going to be a better benchmark than last year, because
Yeah.
last year it was new. I'm not even sure that every kid got it, like what the numbers, well, I could probably look up and see and understand how many kids actually, if it was 100% of the kids getting it. But it was a pilot year. So this is going to be a good thing to track over time. It would be interesting, yeah. All right.
Great, thank you so much. This is really interesting.
Thank you.
I'm glad you are supportive of it. Thank you
Yeah,
so much.
absolutely. It's doing good things for our kiddos.
Hi.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Next, we have new programs of study, and it said that Principal Hebert would be here for that, but it's going to be me. It's going to be Assistant Superintendent Yarla. All right.
I just have one question. With programs like this, what's the cost to them? Do we have to buy in to?
We put this, we purchased this under grant money for the first year, and it
Right.
was approximately $12,000. And it will have an impact on the budget next year because it was grant funded for 1 year.
Got it.
And so we will move it into an assessment account
Right.
for net going forward.
Okay, thank you.
That's a good question.
Not a lot of money though for what
If you
we're
consider a
getting out of it.
curriculum.
Yeah, no, for sure.
So
That's a
great
deal.
about that. So, for the last 2 years, I've been working with the Concord High School personnel to look at different pathways, what we call pathways for students. And that has to do with post-graduation, where do you see your career going? And we've joined a statewide cohort with New Hampshire Learning Initiative. So I guess every other month we'll meet as a huge statewide group and we'll talk about what we're doing to make sure that we are helping students determine their future pathways. And so we have done, it's a great group of some high school teachers and counselors, and Kylene, the assistant principal, and Tim Herbert and myself meet once a week, believe it or not, to work on this. And so what I wanted to point out to you is that in this year's program of study, and this is just going to be brief because parents will have an opportunity to look at this program of study and actually have had opportunities to look at this. So what you're going to see that's new to this program of study is if you turn to, I'm sorry, I don't have it right in front of me. If you turn to page 14, you're going to see a list of what we're calling pathways. So it might be something like architect and construction, government and public administration, human services, science and technology, and each of them have a little icon associated with them, or to them. And in there are, like, for financial services, next to financial services, that might mean that you might go into accounting, banking services, business finance, insurance, security, and investments. So these little icons you're going to find throughout the program of study. And so if we just take the next page, page 15, if you're somebody who recognizes really early on that you might want to, in your career, go into agricultural, food, and natural resources, you'll see that little icon there. That's in the upper left. And then you're going to see career examples of all the different opportunities that you might seek. Or you could do it in the reverse. You could say, I know I'm really interested in becoming a geologist. Where can I find the word geologist in this program of study? So basically, essentially, what it does is it lays out on the right side of the page the suggested courses that you might want to take toward this pathway. So in grade 9, typically, most of the time, grade 9 is your required courses anyway. But it indicates there that you're going to make sure that you want to get into probability and statistics. So if we were to backwards design this, you would be somebody who wanted to make sure that you got beyond Algebra 1, Algebra 2, and geometry so that you could get into probability and statistics. So it will help you plan your 4 year high school experience in terms of at what grade would it be recommended that you take specific courses. So we did this for every single pathway. And we brought this back to all of the high school teachers for their input. Like, did we miss a career example? Did we miss the college major? Did we miss any trade or training? And got input to the point where we were able to publish this. Even since it's been published, there have been there's been additional feedback like, oop, you forgot, like it's really important to take da-da-da-da.
Yeah.
Great, fine, we'll make sure it gets in there. Because this is our first year rolling this out. So toward this rollout, Tim Herbert and the counselors did a Zoom meeting last week for all parents at the high school so that they could learn about the pathways. And then again, did you were aware of that?
Yeah.
And then again on next Monday, they'll do it for middle school parents or 8th grade parents. Although parents could attend either session, it doesn't matter. The most important piece is that what's happening now is the high school staff is going to the 8th graders, right to their advisories to let them know. Start thinking about what kind of courses you might want to take. all of the counselors will have a group of students that they're aligned to make sure that they're checking in on their pathways regularly. And certainly, it is not set in stone that once you start that pathway, that you have to stay in that pathway. It's highly flexible. And it's not tied to graduation. You do not have to enter a pathway for graduation. It's just more of, I don't know, almost want to say like intellectual exercise, and like if you were to backwards design your high school years, what would it look like, knowing, if you knew specifically that you want to go into education, what might I want to take right away and make sure that I'm on the right path toward that.
Well, I think it also makes the, it makes the courses they're taking even as
Feel like they
middle
matter
school,
more.
like they matter more. There's
Purpose.
a reason I need to take this now.
Yeah.
There's a reason I need to pay attention to this.
And some of the middle school teachers have said that, in particular math teachers have said, it's not enough for me to be saying to them, it's really important that you get through Algebra 1 because you can't get into probability and statistics if you haven't done past Algebra 1, so that you're on track. And so having this in the hands of parents at the middle school is going to hopefully take that message away from the math teachers who are like, no, you really need to do this assignment.
It also help parents that don't know how to help their kids. Like my mom would have no idea. Like this would have been so helpful for me growing up, and I love that there's the actual activities too, so they can tie it all together. Isn't that great? I really.
The thing with the activities on there, and then maybe choosing a class that you might not take because it's on the list. If you didn't like that, find out, in 10th grade, you know what, I really don't want to do this. This isn't what I thought it was at all. And you just gained a great class without wasting a college tuition on a class you paid credit for because that's what you thought. It's not like you're channeling somebody that they have to do something, but they can have these discoveries as 14, 15-year-olds instead of thinking for 4 years of high school, taking all their normal classes that they want to do something, and getting to college and realizing, this isn't what I want to do at all. But I think the activity links, the list of activities are even better because that's no harm, no foul. You meet a bunch of kids, you join a club or an activity, and again, maybe you love it, maybe you don't. This is a great focus.
Yeah, I really like this.
Yeah,
It's
so I
worth
just
your
commend
weekly
this to you and to
meetings.
parents, and hope people appreciate how much work went into this, and how
It's very
committed.
evident looking at it how much work went into it, for sure. This did not come out of a vacuum, for sure.
I know you're doing these meetings virtually. Is there any thought about having parents come in person and giving them the hard copy instead of going through it with them so that they could understand better what? I think as time goes on, parents will start to look for this.
Yeah, that's absolutely something. I know that the high school is always willing and, to meet with parents. So I don't know if there's something scheduled, but the
Even
fact
middle
that,
school.
well, the fact that it's January and we've already presented to the students and to the parents,
Right.
we're really trying to get ahead of it. And then when they actually sit down to enroll in their classes, they'll have one-on-one counselor.
That's great.
This is so helpful on so many levels, like
Amazing.
life skills, school. Thank you. For
And I really appreciate that the categories, it puts there's no tier of importance
Right.
when it comes to what pathway you're going to take. It's just like, if you're going to be in a human service position, here's a bunch of examples of what that could be. But ultimately, you need a certain set of skills to be able to do any of this stuff. I really appreciate the level playing field it creates for kiddos making these decisions. I think it's awesome. This is really, really cool.
Vocational education feel.
Yeah.
I was at the education conference. I was the keynote speaker there, and so you have an audience full of kids. And so as I'm talking, I'm sharing a story about something I've gone through medically. I have raise your hand if you're an LNA. Raise your hand if what you want to be. And at the end of it all, how they feel is that the only reason a doctor sometimes can do well is because the nurse and the LNA and
It's all about your team.
like they're all doing their job really well, but there really isn't the most important piece. It's all of them.
Right.
And this sounds like that.
Yeah, I totally agree.
Thank you.
Yay, well done. I actually had to I had to look at every single
We have
program
it.
of studies for every single high school in the state. It was one of my jobs at Reaching Higher. And I can't tell you how telling a program of study is about the quality of education you're going to wind up getting in that district. It's really like,
It's very disparate.
yeah, incredibly so. It really is. And so then you look at something like this and you're like, oh my God. It's, yeah, that's game changing. Very exciting. I was actually in a meeting with NHLI today talking about this. About their
Who runs
program.
our project search program?
Hmm?
Who runs our project search program? Or who's it? You do? I started it with TD Bank in New Jersey. Well, I was, when we first kicked it off, we were the first bank to do it.
That's cool.
I'm so passionate about that.
I'm on the board too.
Yeah. Oh my God, that's awesome.
Ah, that's killer.
Yeah, I've been doing that for a couple.
Have you been to the conferences?
I haven't yet. No, I send off Stephanie North, our lead teacher. She
Okay.
goes every year. But yeah,
Okay.
yeah. I've met with the national people.
Yeah.
2 times.
I spoke at the conference in Anaheim for them. Yeah.
That's so cool.
Awesome.
Yeah, I'm super passionate. I would love to. Anything I do, help you guys with that. Hands down.
It looks like we are
At the
down to this.
at the end. Do you
We should
want me
end
to
it with
jump in?
this. This is like
Do you
a
want me to jump
feel-good,
in?
like,
Brenda, do you want me to jump
Yes,
into
I'm
this?
sorry.
So every year, we have an annual student report in district staffing. So this, I'm not going to go through it page by page
Thank
because
you.
this is, this is a resource for you. This will be very valuable
This is cool.
as a resource when you're looking at budget. And it's really a snapshot of what's happening right now. All the data that we have is December data, December 1. So they gathered all of that data for every some history. So just know that you'll see some trends and history in relative to staffing. That's the first section of this. Followed by your elementary enrollments. It's based, and that has a 10-year history as well as what it looks like at every one of the elementary schools. Followed by the middle school. There's information about that as well as the high school and what's happening up there. Again, you'll see all of the coursework in here that they take and the current numbers of students in all those programs. So, you know, it will be very important as you head into the budget season. And last but not least on this is all the information around the Career and Technical Center. That's at the end. I'm not going to go through every one of them. You can please take some time to look at this because it will be helpful when we begin the process of budget.
Do you want us to bring these with us?
I would bring them with you. I'll
Yeah.
have extra copies. The other thing is, just know, I think you heard Kim talk about students signing up for their courses for next year. We will have for you at the budget meeting, I think it's in March. One of your budget meetings in March will be all the data for the programs that the kids signed up for. So we'll have all the new updated numbers for 24-25. As well as at the high school, it's really the high school, as well as CRTC. That helps you to decide about teaching positions. You know, do we have enough kids signed up? Do we need to add another section of English? Do we need to, do we have not enough youngsters signed up for the art program, whatever? That isn't usually the case, by the way. We usually have a lot of kids signing up for art. But you'll get a sense of that so you know what we have and then what our youngsters chose, what the students chose for their subjects for next year. This is really just data for you, and they've been doing this in the district. How long, Barb? Every year? This enrollment report has always been a part of the, yeah.
As long as I can.
Yeah.
The only question I have on these is, I'm assuming in here somewhere is this kiddos, and thank you for that word, going from the elementary schools to middle school and the middle school, high school, like with the drop-off numbers from that, or numbers from that. Do we know? Like if we lose students?
Yeah, we
between
know
the two?
that the place where we have lost students has been at the middle school. We just seem to lose them there. You know, it's the most difficult age. It's the challenging age, and lots of times we see students will navigate towards a smaller setting. Sometimes, sometimes it has to do with their interests too. You know, you don't know, but usually we're doing okay everywhere else. Numbers is fairly steady.
Yeah.
We're going to see a difference, I think, down the road with Deerfield when they have their new contract. You know, before it was 90% of the kids from Deerfield came to Concord. They have more of a choice now, a choice program. So, so that might change out our numbers a little bit. Jack and I are going to come to you and talk a little bit about open enrollment school. What does that look like? We think that it will be attractive to the schools that have offered choice.
Yes.
You know,
Yeah.
so we're looking and exploring. Obviously, when you keep your numbers up, you can offer more programs and classes for students, and that's what we want to do for all of our Concord kids. We want them to be able to have a really wide choice of classes. As you'll see that in the book,
Yeah.
you'll see all the courses, and it's also in the program of studies that Kim brought to you tonight. So,
Yeah. I love this.
really good stuff. Really, really good stuff.
Thank you.
Well, with that, do you have any questions?
No.
No, this is
Then
awesome.
I would-
Lots of hard work
Welcome.
delivered tonight.
Exactly.
I'll make a motion to adjourn, if that's what you're looking
Do I
for.
have a second on that?
I'll second because this is my first committee meeting ever with you guys.
Oh my
Thank you all.
God. Welcome,
All those
friends.
in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Abstaining? No. All right, good. We are adjourned.
Hey.
Nice job.
Thanks, chair lady.
Dinner. Yes.